I missed you guys last week. I was off in Vermont, my Uncle Jay's memorial service, which was, on the one hand, a little bit sad, but on the other hand, he was 90, so it wasn't completely unexpected. It was good to get back together with family and be together and hear some of the stories about my uncle from other people's perspectives, which was wonderful. And he had been, he's at a retirement home in Vermont, which is probably more active than most of us are. In Vermont, they say if you don't do two things outdoors in a day, then you've missed out. And he was very much doing that. He was riding around town on a motor scooter, and he had a summer car and a winter car and a girlfriend, and was traveling and doing a whole bunch of stuff. And then towards last spring, early part of the summer, he started to have low energy, and they wanted to do surgery, but he wasn't healthy enough for the surgery, so they were going to wait. And the whole family got together for a 90th birthday celebration. They went to the Berkshires, and everybody was together. It was wonderful. And he came back, and then things turned worse and turned worse and turned worse. At one point, he told my cousin Kathy, "I should never have turned 90." And you can kind of understand that. And his mom lived to be 101.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's where I was last week, and it's kind of given me some ideas about where we're going today. The talk is called ROI, or Return on Intention. It's kind of similar to what businesses do with the return on investment. And in our consciousness, we set an intention, a desire to bring something into our lives, and that is the metric by which we're looking at what's showing up in our lives. And it's not like we're doing something wrong if it doesn't work and we can take credit if it does. It's just that's the process that we're involved in. So a few people in our congregation who are professional drivers with Uber or Lyft or taxis or personal or whatever it happens to be. And when somebody gets into the car with them, the first thing that they say is where to. Because if you don't know where you're going, how will you know when you got there? It's the biggest question, where to? And so many times, I was talking about this a couple of weeks ago, the question is where to, and the answer is, well, not here. What do you want in your life? Well, not this. What a great story that Adam told us about his wife. Because she could look at that situation and say, I don't like this. I don't like the fact that my company is moving to Jenkintown. I don't like the fact that I'm going to have to do this. I don't like this. She could settle into what it was that she didn't like. But instead opened her awareness to what she wanted instead. She wanted to enjoy where she was working. She wanted it to pay her adequately. She wanted it to fit in with her lifestyle. And by deciding where it was that she wanted to be going, the way was opened up for doing that. Now, she didn't do that all herself. There were a lot of other people who were involved. There were a lot of pieces that came together to make that all work. But it always starts in consciousness. It always starts in our own consciousness and our own intention. Where to? What is it that I'm really wanting? What is it that I'm calling into my life? Because otherwise, it's like getting in the back of the cab and telling the driver, just drive around. Turn the meter on and drive around for a while. I'm going to enjoy whatever the scenery happens to be, and I'm going to be okay with the meter. Drive around for some period of time, and it doesn't matter where you got. If all you want is that experience of driving around, that's fine. But be really clear when you get into the cab and do that that's what you want to do. Because otherwise you just get mad at the driver because he's driving you around his favorite neighborhood. Keeps on driving past his girlfriend's house or his favorite donut shop or whatever it happens to be. In Little League, when the team first gets together, and then again later in the season when things aren't going well. I don't know if you ever watched a Little League team. Sometimes things start to unravel a little bit. And the coach always wants to focus on the fundamentals. Let's get back to the fundamentals. Keep your eye on the ball. When you hit the ball, you follow through. Well, that's really important in our lives as well, to have that focus and that attention, that intention, and also to have the follow-through. Because if we start a thought moving, I know this happens for me all the time, if I start a thought moving, and then I change the thought to the things that could happen that are bad, that I don't want to have happen, and it goes down into that rabbit hole, then I don't really know what I'm thinking about. I want to keep myself focused on what it is that I want to be experiencing. When I open myself up to that good, and I don't have to know how it's going to happen. In fact, the best times are when I have no idea how it's going to happen. How did this new job show up? She was in the industry, somebody knew about her, there was a resume that was in the front of the right person at the right time, and the pieces clicked and fell together. Now, I'm sure that Amanda did everything that was necessary to put herself in the position where she could get that job. Everything from personally and consciously being open to it, to all of the good work that she'd been doing, to the network that she'd been building, to the resumes that she'd sent out, or the postings that she did, whatever it was. She put herself in the position where that good was available to her. That's just so huge. One of the things that my uncle was involved in, he was real involved in his Episcopal church up in Vermont. And one of the chaplains there, who had spent a lot of time with him, mentioned at some point along the way that my Uncle Jay had hoped that he was forgiven. Which is kind of interesting, because in our teaching there's really not a framework for that. And even in his, there's not that much of a framework for that. Because the question is, who's doing the forgiving? Do I hope that God forgives me for whatever it is that I've done wrong? It'd be nice. That'd be wonderful if God would forgive me for what I've done wrong, but there's a couple of real tripwire assumptions in there. The second one is that I could do something wrong, that I could do something that would displease God, that God has some set of standards that I have to somehow live up to. You know, that somebody might have written down in a book in a particular language at a particular time that doesn't necessarily agree with what somebody else wrote down in a different book in a different language at a different time. The first assumption there is that I might have done something to displease God. But that's only the second one. The first part of it is the assumption that God is out there someplace, looking down on me and working out whatever needs to be worked out. Something I've said a whole bunch of times here. God has a last name. A lot of people are fighting over what God's first name is. God's last name is within. When I'm looking to God, if I'm looking out there, I'm separating myself. I am separating myself. God's not separate from me. But I can separate myself from God. I can think that I'm not playing on the A team. I can think that I'm not connected. I can think that that good isn't available to me. And when that's what I'm believing, if that's what I'm intending, guess what? That's what it's going to feel like. That's what it's going to look like. If I put my power into an external judgmental God, I should not be at all surprised if I feel judged. If I am judged, if circumstances show up where there's judgment going on about me, and I don't have to. So the question that we get to ask ourselves, whether it's when we can't find our cell phone, or in my uncle's case, when he was lying in hospice, do I forgive myself? Does the God within me forgive me for any transgressions that I might have judged upon myself? Because at the end of the day, that's what we got. They're prisoners who are in jail who are convinced that they didn't do anything wrong, that it was the system, that it was somebody else, that there was some power outside of themselves, and yet they're the one who's sitting there. And if they're okay with it, their whole experience can change. Doesn't necessarily, but it can. But that's all an inside job. So we talk about that as the balance between authority and accountability. I'm jumping around a bunch here, and I will tell you why in just a minute. Maybe. There are a lot of people and a lot of religious practices that talk about fault and blame and judgment. We don't do that. We talk about authority and accountability. And authority is just such a wonderful word. Because the person who exercises their authority is what? An author. Well, as an author, you're writing the story yourself. So if you have the authority to write the story, to create the story, to do whatever it is that you want to do, that's wonderful freedom. That's the intention part of it. What is it that I want to create today? What is it that I want to author in my life? What's the story that I want to be creating? And we can do anything. We literally can do just about anything. We can make really, really good choices. We can make really, really bad choices. And the second part of that, when something happens that we love, that we like, that we are very pleased with, and we feel like taking credit for it, it's not I, it's the Father within who doeth the work. God within is doing that. It's doing it through me. It's doing it because of all those pieces that I've helped put together. But it's not me. It's me participating with that creative power. I have the ability as the author to say how that power is going to be working, but I'm not doing it. Why is that important? What's that?
Gives us power.
Yeah. That's important because when it goes off the rails and it's not working the way that we want it to be working, it's not my fault. I have created an experience, I have set an intention, and the things are coming together in a way that's reflecting that. And if I don't like it, that's okay. I'm accountable for it, but I'm not to blame for it. As I watch the circumstances that go on around in my life, the things that are happening to me and the ups and downs that I'm experiencing, when I label them as good or bad or happy or sad, whatever that happens to be. If I look within myself and say, I'm not having an experience that I don't like, and I want to change that so that I can bring in an experience that I do like, I need to be accountable for being where I am. Now, it may or may not be my fault. Sometimes it's something that I created, and boy, have I created some stuff in my life to be accountable for. Anger and misery and challenge and difficulty and poverty and all sorts of different things. And I've also had some wonderful experiences in my life. But in all of them, I'm accountable for where my beliefs were. Some of them I knew about. Some of them I didn't find out about until the last minute. So it turns out that I've been pushing myself pretty hard. I've been working a 40-hour day job plus running New Thought Philadelphia, and then I'm taking time off to drive to Vermont, which is 8.5 hours away, and drive back and meetings and all sorts of stuff. And I was doing fine with it. Or so I thought. And then on Friday, I felt lightheaded. And I went to work, and I continued to feel lightheaded. And the universe said, you're not going to get any work done today. I found myself sitting in a meeting, and all of the other people in the meeting started to sound like the parents in a Charlie Brown cartoon. And I said, this is not going to go anyplace good. So I had one conference that I needed to be involved in that I could do by phone in the afternoon. So I said, I'm going home. I went home, I took a nap. The universe, of course, conspired once again to make things easy, because when I called in for the conference call, it turns out that it had been postponed till Monday. And so I had Friday afternoon off. And I took a nap. And then after I got up from the nap, I took another nap. And then I went to bed early. And I took it really easy yesterday. And so I'm feeling a lot better at this point. I don't feel any congestion. My nose isn't running. There's nothing that seems like a cold. I feel like I've got some congestion in my head. But man, isn't that a gentle way for the universe to tell me that I need a nap? I've seen people who have wound up in the hospital for 2 weeks or with the flu or something like that. It wasn't necessary in my case. So I was willing to take that guidance and that input. And I'm so grateful for the way that that showed up in my life. So I'm allowing myself to be accountable for that. And I'm not sure what all the details are that are going on with that. But perhaps they will be revealed to me. Perhaps not. So when things go well, God loves you. When things go poorly, God loves you. Because it's not about the things. They're all experiences that we can have. In this teaching, the reason that we believe that God doesn't need to forgive you is because everything that can possibly happen is happening within that energy and presence of God. So nothing is bad. We label it as good or bad. We label it as successful or unsuccessful, whatever labels we put onto it, and then we can judge it and say it needs to be forgiven. That's an inside job. We get to blame ourselves or accept the blame that other people are labeling us with and say, yeah, that must be true, and then look for forgiveness from those same people or from ourselves. And that's okay, because there's a lot of metrics that we want to be able to use to live the life that we want to be living. You know, if one of my goals is to stay within the lines, then I need to pay attention to where the lines are, and it would be nice to know when I'm drifting out beyond the lines. You know, those little bumps on the highway are great. You start to go outside the lines, that goes da, 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 which is much better than either the police stopping you and telling you that you're outside the lines, or another car coming in the opposite direction showing you that you're outside the lines. There are a lot of different ways that indicator can show up. We get to be attuned to that and allow that to come together. And we're always getting what we need. We might not be getting what we want. We certainly might not be getting what we think we want. I did not think that I needed to take a couple of days off, but I did. So I did. And the universe, the infinite, that God presence, can be very gentle and can be very persistent. Because if I'd resisted and bowled through, something else would have let me take a nap for 2 days or 2 weeks or whatever it happens to be. You know what I'm talking about. There's always something. So my Uncle Jay, 90 years old, he didn't do anything wrong. He was in hospice, and he said to my cousin, I should never turn 90. And it's like there was something wrong with him turning 90. If he hadn't done that, then it would have gone okay. And that's not true. He's a divine, perfect spiritual being having an experience in a human body. And that one was running about 90 years. He didn't do anything wrong. That's a rich, full, good life. Yes, he would have liked for it to go on longer. But by the same token, he'd been out celebrating his birthday a month before and hanging with family and having a girlfriend and driving around on a motor scooter. So if the choice was spending a whole long time in hospice or in invalid care, the way that it came together for him was actually quite wonderful. So back to the idea about when you feel joy, God feels joy. When you feel pain, God feels joy. God's not changing. The same thing happens around here. We've had some folks in the community who have gone through some challenges, and they felt like they can't come in and talk to us because they want to be happy and present and fun and joyous and successful. And yeah, it's wonderful to hear those stories. It's wonderful when stuff's happening and everybody can give those wonderful prayer work stories about how great their life is going. And when your life is going great, we love you. And if perchance for some reason your life's not going great, we still love you. That's the opportunity we really get to connect as a community. So if there is an opportunity that you have when you feel like, I don't want to go see those guys again because they're always happy, clappy, and hugging each other, and saying that everything's going to be okay. No, sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't feel good. Sometimes there's awkward challenges. And in that case, it's wonderful to have a community around you where we can see the truth of who you are anyway. We can see that you are that bright light of God's love all the time, whether it's shining brightly and everything is happy, or it's hidden and mysterious and you can't spot it at all. We still know that it's there. We can join you, hold your hand, give you a hug, do a prayer, know the truth, and know that whatever is unfolding next is an opportunity for more of that good, more of that joy to come into your life. Because we're all connected. When something good happens to somebody in this community, I feel great. When something challenging happens to somebody in this community, I feel like I have an opportunity to be present and support somebody in a way that I wouldn't be able to otherwise. So it's all good. In its own way, it's all good. So when the question is where to, there's a lot of different choices. If you know exactly where it is that you're headed, if you know the job that you want to have, if you know the experience that you want to be having, pray for that. Set that as the intention and wait for that to return to you. And if you don't know exactly what it is that you want, you could pray for clarity. We've been discussing in a separate group the downside of praying for clarity. And the metaphor that I have is being in the experience of standing in the middle of my life and smelling something that doesn't smell particularly good, and I don't like this smell, and I don't want to be involved in this, and I really want to be having a different experience. And I pray for clarity, and I realize that I'm up to my neck in a cesspool. Well, it's good, because at that point I can say, oh, now I know what's going on. But where am I? I'm up to my neck in a cesspool. And then I have to get out of it. So you could pray for clarity if you wanted to. Or what we've taken to doing now is we pray for guidance, and in some cases, blissful ignorance. I don't necessarily want to know why it stinks now, but I want guidance on what that next step is, and the next step is, and the next step is. So eventually, when I come to the awareness of, you know what? I used to be in a cesspool. And I can look at it, it's over there, it's over there. It doesn't have anything to do with me now. You can do that anyway. There's no specific requirement about the steps that you have to go through. You don't need to realize what's going on in your life now to have it turn better. Simply set the intention for something better. So the invitation for you, for this week and for always, is to set that intention for the highest and best to unfold for you and for everybody involved with love and ease. Set that as the intention, and then follow through and allow the good into your lives, because you deserve it. So it is.
So it is.